and welcome back. My name is Sheldon McLeod. This is Thinking Out Loud, presented to you here on the SaltWire Network. You can find us where you find your podcasts. You can find our new YouTube video channel. Make sure you subscribe, like the videos. Love hearing and reading your comments, so please engage on that platform as well. And what you may or may not be aware of is that February is Heart Month in Canada, well, in much of the world. And you may think what's happening here in Nova Scotia is isolated to us. Well, no, here in Britain, they're talking about heart care suffering in a system in crisis, very much like what we're seeing in Nova Scotia. And there have been other, ways for us to talk about this ongoing situation. I don't know. Do you have first aid training? Has this been part of your life? Is it something you're required to do through work? Do you have an AED in your office? Is that something that you're familiar with? All of this to say, Mike Janczyszyn is here with us. And Mike, he's employed with EHS. What exactly is your title these days, Mike?
Yeah, so thanks for having me, Sheldon. So my title is AED Registry Program Coordinator with EHS. So I kind of do that, and I'm also a full-fledged paramedic, still work on the trucks as well.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Heart Month. And, if Great Britain is saying, the pandemic has brought about perhaps delayed care, challenges within the system where people don't want to wait. I know, speaking with people in the health authority within that world, they really want to reassure people, call if you need help. It may be a wait, but someone will get to you. And I guess that your message would be no different.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's important to note, Sheldon, that really the message has stayed the same, right? And this is years and years, before the pandemic. It's always kind of really following that American Heart Association or Heart and Stroke chain of survival. So the key pieces, especially when we talk about sudden cardiac arrest, is the first three links of calling 911 and recognition of something happening, doing CPR, and using an AED. I mean, that message has been kind of through and through, kind of the same throughout, for sure.
And I guess some people are maybe worried about doing something wrong, something that might be more harmful, and maybe they've heard the Good Samaritan Act. How do you reassure people that, doing something is always better than doing nothing?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question, and it's being in this role. It's a question that comes up all the time. I mean, you get the liability question. It's like, what's my liability with helping someone or having an AED? And essentially in Nova Scotia, we're covered under that, like you said, Good Samaritan Act, or they call it the Volunteer Services Act in Nova Scotia. And it has kind of wording surrounding helping people first aid. And as well, in 2018, we helped the government kind of change it to include wording around AEDs, or Automated External Defibrillators. So, I mean, it's as long as you're there to help and trying to help, you're not liable for anything. And it's really, we want people to help, right? I mean, let's not mince words here. It's we want everyone to be trained, whether you're going online and watching, a couple-minute video on how to do CPR and how to use an AED, or taking a full course. I mean, we always recommend full courses. There's lots of certifying agencies that pull them: Red Cross, Heart and Stroke, St. John Ambulance, Life Saving Society, all those certifying agencies. We want people to get trained no matter what, and this is a life skill that people should have.
And before we talk about the registry and how that's going, I want to hear from you about the evolution, the changes that have happened. I know the pandemic brought about concerns about, exposure to COVID and breaths, and, how there's this constant evolution or understanding or education that happens when it comes to providing, essential care in that golden hour.
Yeah, exactly. And it did change for us a little bit in terms of, the recommendation was always to do CPR still, but we really did do a shift, and this was happening before COVID as well, but a shift to hands-only CPR, which is very effective for the adult population. And what I mean by that is when you're trained fully, you're kind of trained to do 30 compressions, 2 breaths. But maybe you don't want to do that, or maybe you don't have the barrier device to do the breaths. So maybe you're just doing hands-only CPR. You're doing compressions at about 100 to 120 minutes, and that's sufficient. Obviously, you've called 911, and paramedics and maybe other first responders are on the way. But that's at the time, that's great to do. You're still kind of circulating the blood throughout the body.
How many times have you had to do CPR in the field?
Oh, geez, that's a good question. You know what? I haven't counted, and I don't know many for sure, and I think I've lost count, and I think that's maybe on purpose to to not keep track of each time, I think.
Well, that's a fair comment. And I know that I've had people in my circle who have been called to provide CPR, and as much as you're hopeful, the outcome is not always good. I'm just curious, is how would you set someone up for success knowing that it might not turn out the way you hope?
Yeah, that's a great point, Sheldon. And I think it's important to know that CPR and AEDs and the whole chain of survival really is the best chance of survival for someone. So is CPR going to get everyone back? No. Is an AED going to get everyone back? No, obviously not. But the percentage goes up quite significantly when you're actually doing it quickly. So when we're talking about response times and stuff like that, this has always been the case of this is a public and community skill. So, excuse me. So when we're talking about CPR and AEDs, we want it quickly. So if you can get it, if you can, recognize that someone's in cardiac arrest and do CPR within 30 seconds, that's great. If you can get the AED on as quick as possible within the 30 seconds to a minute, that's also great. That's our provincial medical director has never mixed word that you're never going to get response times that are 30 seconds to a minute all the time, right? This is why they're in community centers, AEDs, I mean. And this is why we recommend people get trained. This is a community skill, and we really recommend that anyone get trained. And we're working with the Department of Education right now to see if we can get this education mandatory in the curriculum as well.
We've had, and again, not to dwell on sad outcomes, but there have been times where AEDs were not necessarily available, or they were and people didn't know about them. And I believe that's the whole goal of the AED Registry program, is to let people know that these tools are out there, that they exist within community. And here's a few survival stories on the EHS website, savelivesns.ca. So that said, where are you at with this registry? How many are actually registered with the province so that they're available to folks outside of emergency health services if they call 911 and are directed towards one?
Yeah, kind of an exciting moment for us, actually. We just reached a milestone of 2,000 registered AEDs. We're actually closer to 2,050 AEDs registered right now, which is amazing. And it's growing and it's kind of snowballing, and people are seeing the benefits of it. And you're absolutely right. This is the benefit of the program, right? We want people to know where AEDs are. We want people to walk into a location, see the signage, and have that ability to say, you know what, if something goes down here, I have the ability to potentially save a life, and the best opportunity, right? So we want the education, we want the awareness piece there, and hitting that 2,000 mark was kind of a big deal considering where we started, obviously, and it just keeps growing. People are obviously, they're asking a lot of questions about AEDs, And I do want to take this opportunity to kind of mention our partners as well. The Jordan Boyd Foundation has been a huge partner of ours. They just donated an AED to Neptune Theatre, literally just last week, and they've been huge supporters. And obviously, their story is tragic, turned into support for sure. But we partner up with IWK and Heart and Stroke as well, and just all. I mean. And all the community members, right? We can't have this registry without the community members registering their AEDs and getting trained and doing refreshers and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I'll certainly tell people almost every single fire station in Nova Scotia, volunteer or career, will have an AED. The challenge will be if it's outside of hours and it's a volunteer station, there might not be anybody right there at that moment. And I'll be blunt myself. It's kind of selfish. I mean, I go into a business or a building and I see an AED. I check to make sure that it's in operational use, because I would think if I ever had to use it, I would want to make sure it worked. And more importantly, if I ever needed it, I want to make sure it works for somebody else who might need it on me, to be a bit selfish there. But as you mentioned, the programs are out there. They're pretty straightforward. And the registry itself, for folks who may not be aware, how do they register their AED at their business? And does that make them liable for perhaps off business hours?
Yeah, great question. Again, it's you can register online at the savelivesns.ca website that you just put up there. And you can also, I mean, if people aren't into the online registration, we can always email them a copy of a PDF, a fillable PDF form that they can register. And no, there's no liability. There's no additional liability when you register with us. It's all there. It's an adjunct to make sure that we can save more lives. And I do want to take the moment to thank all the MFRs too. We have a great MFR system in Nova Scotia as well, and they work their butts off as well, responding to calls. And it's just that what I love about the program is it's just a whole community-based program, right? So this is about everyone getting involved and trying to get to someone as quick as possible. And we encourage people, like you said, to go into places, check where the AED is. You can kind of see if the green light's flashing there. If an AED is ever beeping, that's a bad sign. AED should never be beeping. So make sure that someone's notified of that. And we encourage people to kind of approach them for sure, not be scared of them.
And we've had success stories. Again, I recall about a year ago where someone at a store, Canadian Tire store, ended up going into cardiac arrest. Staff jumped into action. Their training took over. And I guess that's why you train and retrain, is that then it becomes automatic, and it's something that you don't think about, you just do. And again, increasing the risk or increasing the chances of survival. And I guess just to bring it back, it is Heart Month. And as tempted as you might be to want to drive someone or yourself to a hospital if you think you're having a heart attack, you're going to miss the opportunity to meet the advanced care paramedics like Mike, who have the ability on board to deliver life-saving care in the ambulance. And I don't know that everyone's aware of that. Do you find that people perhaps don't know that level of training is out there and the ability exists within the trucks?
You know, it's just, I mean, there's no hiding the fact that healthcare right now is a topic of conversation for sure. And I do want to reiterate that we have some of the best, nurses, paramedics, physicians, and other healthcare providers. But specifically for paramedics, we do have a great paramedic system and great paramedics that work for us. We're some of the highest trained, I guess, in the country, potentially in the world. We have a great scope of practice and great autonomy. So definitely highly trained. So regardless of the other healthcare system kind of stuff going on, we definitely try hard, as well as the other healthcare providers, and definitely, appreciate the confidence in the system that most people give us for sure.
So very highly trained that everybody wants to hire them away from Nova Scotia, but that's not for that's not a conversation for you, Mike. But again, for folks wanting to know more about this training sessions, you said coming up on Monday, February 13th, there's an event happening?
Yeah, so just a little plug here for Heart and Stroke. And there's a Wear Red campaign, which is happening, and there's a kind of a session happening at the RBC Center at the Halifax Infirmary. So for those folks who want to kind of travel in or who live kind of in the Halifax region, it's only two hours long, I think, from 11 to 1. And they are focusing a lot on women's health, which is kind of a theme of this month, and kind of what they're trying to put out there and educate people on is that, and kind of stemming away from the cardiac arrest theme a little bit, because I don't want to confuse people between heart attack and cardiac arrest, but right. Heart attack symptoms for females or women can be much different. So, and there's, sometimes not a lot of people can identify the different symptoms. And they want to put that out there. They want to make sure people are aware of that, and they want to make sure that everyone's got health equity and the ability to get the same treatment and assessments as any other kind of sex or gender out there. So, it's really important. It's an important conversation to have for sure. And I could go on for more time, but definitely check that out. And if anyone has any questions on time or event details, they can always email me. All my contact information is on the savelivesns.ca website as well.
All right. Well, since you opened that can of worms, the difference between a heart attack, cardiac arrest, and a stroke in 30 seconds. And I'm great.
Yeah. So heart attack and cardiac arrest, best to be quickly described as kind of a plumbing versus electrical issue. So plumbing would be the heart attack portion, where you have the kind of the blockage in the coronary artery causing the heart attack. heart attack can cause or can lead to cardiac arrest, but not all the time. That's where you get the clutching of the chest, or maybe the sweating, the nausea. Cardiac arrest is obviously unresponsive. They're not breathing properly, and they likely have no pulse. So that's when you're doing CPR. Stroke, similar to that plumbing issue, they can have that clot up in the brain. It's a brain issue more than a heart issue, and you get the clot, and then you get the facial droop, the arms aren't equal, speech is off, and you definitely need to call 911 for that for sure to get quick treatment. That's kind of my quick 30-second rundown.
No, I think that does help illustrate what we're talking about and does differentiate. And choking is also a contributor towards cardiac arrest. So all of that to say, there's lots of information. It's not all that complicated. The training is fairly straightforward. It can be a 1 or 2 day course, and it can really arm you for success. And again, be selfish about it. It might be somebody in your family, somebody close to you, it might be someone next door. It could be a stranger, but the more people who have this knowledge, the more opportunities we have to have better or more positive outcomes. So Mike Janczyszyn, thank you again for all the information, and we'll point people again to the website. You mentioned it, savelivesns.ca. Fantastic.
Thanks so much, Sheldon.